How you doing today? This is Daniel, Mr. Cuervo Racing. Welcome to the channel if you're new. Welcome back if you're a subscriber, and thanks for watching. Today we're talking about valve lash adjustments, a couple tips, tricks, and size of some components, and what we're doing. So basically, Raptor 700, the usual suspect. Simple valve adjustment. This bike's got a hot cam 3 in it. Pretty common camshaft. So basically today we got this engine, fuel tank, everything out of the way. If you can't figure out how to do that, you shouldn't be working on your bike engine. So basically we got this engine set at top dead center. You can see this index mark here. That lines up with the peak of the head, and that is at top dead center. Now, in the book, they'll say to pull this timing plug off or rotate the engine, but you really don't have to do that, especially on these milder cams. Getting that index relatively close to TDC is good enough for your valve adjustment. So basically rotating the engine over, just click it up into 5th gear, rock the bike over until you line up those marks. So makes a little less work. You don't really have to get in there and do that. You can if you want to be all precise and stuff, but it's really not necessary. So basically what we're doing is we are checking the free play between the tip of this adjuster and the tip of the valve. Now, it's a very, very small minor movement there, and that is what they call valve lash. That distance there that makes up that that gap, gives it some room to grow. So what we got going on here is this is what they call a tappet screw. As the screw threads in, changes the length of the distance between the tappet and the tip of the valve. So lock nut on there to lock that in place. We use a couple different tools with this. This is a standard filler gauge set. It's available at most auto parts stores. It's about $8 or so. You do need to, when getting a filler gauge set, some of them don't go down small enough. Want to get a gauge set that goes down to at least 4.004, and that's in thousandths. This other number underneath there is, you see where it says mm, that's in millimeter. So most of the gauges you'll see have both of those settings, and different camshaft manufacturers will spec differently. So the factory cam is going to spec in millimeter, the hot cam specs in millimeter, all of the webcams spec in thousandths. So just got to make sure you're getting the right spec there, because that is a substantial difference. If you say, oh, it's supposed to be 0.10, well, that's 4th thou there. And if you confuse that, that would be 100 thousandths, which is I don't know, about the thickness of those three combined. So I have that gauge set. I have these other ones that are tapered. These are more of my favorite, a little bit easier to get into tighter spots, or adjusters that are a little bit sunken in. Different engines can benefit from using a tapered set. So to show you a little bit easier on these, what you're going to do on your valve adjustment, I've already adjusted this engine, but what you're going to do is you're going to take your spec. So if your spec's 5 thou, you're going to take that 5 thou filler gauge and make sure that it fits between the in between the valve and the adjuster screw. So it fits in there. There is some drag on it, and that is good. That's what you'd be called a good spec on that. So okay, say my spec's 5. You want to make sure you're not too sure if that was too loose in there. Well, you take a 6 and try to push it underneath there. And this one I can force in. So we would say that's kind of a loose 5. Now if I go up to 7, it's definitely not going to fit. But that's how you check that. So definitely not a 7. 6 I can force in there. We'd say that's a loose 5. And that's one thing to consider too. If your spec is 5, or a lot of times in the manual they'll say they'll give a spec and they'll give a plus or a minus. So if they say 5 thou plus or minus 1, that gives your range 4 thou to 6 thou, going 1 up or 1 down. But what you need to consider is, as valves wear or wear in, that lash is going to get tighter. On 90% of the engines you're going to deal with, the lash is going to get tighter as the valve job wears and the valve moves up in the cylinder head. Now sometimes you do get other component wear, pivot shaft wear, the tip of the tappet screw sometimes wears, and you'll get an increase in gap. That's not as common as tightening up. But basically, like, so if you're 5 plus or minus 1, you don't want to set it at 4, because 4 is at your tightest spec. So that means your valve adjustment is going to be too tight as soon as you see a little bit of wear. So you'd want to set it at 6 and let it tighten up to 5 and then to 4 to give you a little bit longer life between valve adjustments. So as we're set at top dead center, you're doing both intake and exhaust valves. The exhaust side is simple to get to. You don't have to take anything off to get in there. You just can't get a direct line of sight at it. But you can get at that one pretty simple. The intake side, you have to take off the tank and get everything out of the way to get at it. But that's the simplicity of it. It's not a lot to be scared of. A little bit of time involved and a little bit of feel to figure out where that adjustment is. So they say like a go, no go, where you're saying, okay, that 7 thou didn't go in there. That means it's less than 7. But a couple tools we use. This is a Motion Pro tool. There's a part number on it, 08-0073. These are multi-part tools. So this is the 3mm square drive that fits on the end of this adjuster screw there, and allows you to rotate that while having this end fixed on the nut. This is the 10mm tool. It goes over that nut, allows you to lock it down. These are really short, and that is so you don't get crazy and over torque and strip them out. But you can give these a good amount of tension on this short wrench to lock those down. They do sell a 3-part kit that has a 8, a 10, and I believe a 9. But hardly ever use those. The 3-part kit has a 4mm square drive as well as a flat head style screwdriver bit. But you can find these individually as a 10mm and the 3mm drive. I'll have to look up that part number. I'll put a link or something to that in the description. So sorry, nice cam cover there. Happy valve adjusting. get at it, get those adjustments done. On the bigger camshafts, you need to get in there more regularly. I would recommend it for guys who are having 5-6 dune trips a year. I would say get in there once a year and do a valve adjustment on the bigger camshafts. On the smaller stuff, guys are probably kind of in the same boat of you're probably putting a lot more ride time on the smaller builds, but there is specs in the book of hours to put on there. But if you're doing any type of work and you got your plastic and tank off, it only takes a few minutes to get in there and check it at that point. So keep on top of those, keep those valve adjustments going, and don't forget to take care of that. We'll talk to you next time.